Marcus Chen walked slowly up the stone steps of the Grandeur Concert Hall. His old leather bag hung heavy on his shoulder. Inside the bag were his tools for tuning pianos. He looked up at the big building with its tall columns and shiny glass doors. 5 years ago, he would have walked through those doors as a star. Everyone would have known his name. But today, nobody knew who he was. He was just the piano tuner. Marcus pulled open the heavy door and stepped inside. The lobby was beautiful, with marble floors and crystal lights hanging from the ceiling. His worn shoes made soft sounds on the polished floor. A security guard looked at him and nodded. Marcus showed his work pass and walked toward the main concert hall. His left hand hurt a little as he carried his bag. It always hurt. The doctors had done their best after the accident, but his hand would never be the same again. 3 of his fingers didn't move like they used to. There were scars across his palm and wrist. Sometimes the hand felt weak. Other times it felt like it was on fire with pain. Marcus tried not to think about it too much. The main concert hall was empty and dark. Marcus flipped the light switches and the huge room filled with warm yellow light. Rows and rows of red velvet seats faced the stage. Above, there were fancy boxes where rich people sat during concerts. The ceiling was painted with angels and clouds. Everything about this place was made for music, and there, in the center of the stage, sat the piano. It was a Steinway grand piano, black and shining like a jewel. Marcus felt his heart beat faster just looking at it. He set down his bag and walked slowly across the stage. His footsteps echoed in the empty hall. When he reached the piano, he ran his right hand gently across the smooth wood. This was a special instrument. It cost more money than most people made in 10 years. Only the best musicians got to play it. Marcus used to be one of those musicians. Now he just tuned it for others. He sat down on the piano bench and opened the lid. The keys were perfect white and black, waiting. Marcus pulled out his tuning tools and started to work. He had done this job 1,000 times. He knew exactly which strings needed adjustment. His ears were still perfect even if his hand was broken. As he worked, Marcus let his mind wander back to the old days. He remembered being 25 years old and winning the big competition in Vienna. Everyone had said he was going to be one of the greatest pianists in the world. Magazines wrote articles about him. Famous conductors wanted to work with him. He had recordings, contracts, and concert tours planned for years. Then came that night. Marcus and his girlfriend Sarah had been driving home from a party. It was raining. The roads were wet. A truck ran a red light and smashed into their car. Sarah died at the hospital. Marcus lived, but his left hand was crushed. The doctors put his hand back together with metal pins and screws. They did surgery 3 times. When the bandages finally came off, Marcus tried to play the piano, but his fingers wouldn't obey. They were stiff and slow. Some notes he couldn't play at all. The hand that used to fly across the keys now stumbled and shook. His career was over before he turned 30. Marcus shook his head and focused on his work. The past was gone. This was his life now. He moved from concert hall to concert hall, tuning pianos for other people to play. It paid his bills. It kept him close to music even if he couldn't make it anymore. He was almost finished tuning when he heard voices. The stage door opened and several people walked in. Marcus recognized the concert hall manager, Mr. Richard Blackwood. He was a tall man with gray hair and expensive suits. He always looked down his nose at the workers. With Blackwood were some musicians carrying instrument cases. They were here for rehearsal. Tonight there would be a big concert. Some famous pianist was coming to play. Marcus had seen the posters around town. Marcus quickly gathered his tools. He wanted to finish his work and leave before the musicians started. But as he packed his bag, his eyes went back to the piano keys. His fingers itched to play. Just one song. Just once he looked around. The musicians were talking to Blackwood near the door. Nobody was watching him. Marcus knew he shouldn't do it. This wasn't his piano to play, but the need inside him was too strong. He had to touch the music one more time. Marcus sat back down on the bench. He placed his hands over the keys. His right hand felt strong and sure. His left hand trembled a little. He took a deep breath and started to play. The music that came out was Rachmaninoff. It was one of the hardest pieces ever written for piano. Marcus used to play it perfectly back when both his hands worked right. Now his left hand struggled with the fast notes. But something strange happened. Even though his playing wasn't perfect, it was beautiful. There was feeling in every note. The struggle made it more real, more human. Marcus closed his eyes and let the music flow through him. For these few minutes, he wasn't a broken piano tuner. He was an artist again. He forgot about the accident. He forgot about Sarah. He forgot about all the years of pain and loss. There was only the music and his hands on the keys and the sound filling up the empty concert hall. Didn't hear the footsteps coming toward the stage. He didn't see Richard Blackwood stop and stare with his mouth open. He didn't notice the musicians putting down their instruments to listen. Marcus played on, lost in the music. His damaged left hand hit some wrong notes, but he kept going. The melody was sad and beautiful. It sounded like someone crying and laughing at the same time. It sounded like a person who had lost everything but kept fighting anyway. When Marcus finally played the last note, he sat very still. His hand stayed on the keys. His eyes were still closed. He didn't want this moment to end. For just a little while, he had been whole again. Then a voice cut through the silence like a knife. "You." Marcus's eyes flew open. His hands jerked away from the piano. He spun around on the bench and saw Richard Blackwood standing at the edge of the stage. The manager's face was red. His eyes were angry. Behind him, the musicians and some stage workers had gathered. Everyone was staring at Marcus. "What do you think you're doing?" Blackwood's voice was loud and sharp. Marcus stood up quickly. His face felt hot. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwood, I was just what? Playing around on a piano worth more than your car." Blackwood walked closer. His fancy shoes made clicking sounds on the stage floor. "You're the tuner. You tune the piano. You don't play the piano. Do you understand the difference?" "Yes, sir." "I'm sorry. I just finished the tuning and I wanted to test it." Blackwood laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. It was the kind of laugh that made fun of people. "Is that what you call that noise? Testing?" Some of the workers behind Blackwood snickered. Marcus felt his stomach twist. He wanted to explain that he used to be a real pianist, that he had won competitions and played in famous concert halls all over Europe. But the words stuck in his throat. What was the point? That was another life. That was a different person. "I apologize, Mr. Blackwood," Marcus said quietly. He reached for his tool bag, but Blackwood wasn't finished. He walked right up to Marcus and looked him up and down. Marcus could smell the man's expensive cologne. Blackwood's suit probably cost more money than Marcus made in 3 months. "You know what your problem is?" Blackwood said. His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "You don't know your place. You're a piano tuner. That means you work in the background. You're not important. You're just the help." Marcus felt anger start to burn in his chest, but he kept his mouth shut. He needed this job. He couldn't afford to lose his temper with an important man like Blackwood. "Look at everyone," Blackwood said, waving his hand at the group of people watching. "The piano tuner thinks he's an artist. He thinks he can just sit down and play like he's Vladimir Horowitz or something." More laughter from the crowd. Marcus saw some people holding up their phones. They were recording this. His humiliation was going to be on video. Maybe it would end up on the internet. The thought made him feel sick. "I have an idea," Blackwood said suddenly. His eyes got a mean sparkle in them. "Let's make this interesting. You think you can play piano? Really play?" Marcus didn't answer. He had a bad feeling about where this was going. "Here's what we'll do," Blackwood continued. He was enjoying this. "In 20 minutes, some very important people are going to arrive. They're board members and donors, rich people who pay a lot of money to keep this concert hall running. They're coming early for a special reception before tonight's concert." Blackwood put his hands in his pockets and rocked back on his heels. "I want you to play for them. Something hard, something impressive. If you can really play the piano like you think you can, then I'll get down on my knees right here on this stage and apologize to you in front of everyone." The workers gasped. Some whispered to each other. Getting Richard Blackwood to apologize for anything was impossible. The man never admitted he was wrong about anything. But Blackwood held up one finger. "When you fail, and you will fail, you pack up your tools and get out. We'll find a new piano tuner, one who knows his place and doesn't waste our time with his fantasies." Marcus felt trapped. If he said no, Blackwood would probably fire him anyway just for playing without permission. If he said yes and failed, he would lose his job and be humiliated in front of rich, important people. Either way, he lost. But something inside Marcus stirred. It was a feeling he hadn't had in 5 years. It was pride. It was anger. It was the memory of who he used to be before the accident took everything away. "What if I say no?" Marcus asked. Blackwood smiled coldly. "Then you're fired anyway. At least this way you have a chance. A very small chance, but still a chance." Marcus looked at his left hand. The scars were visible even in the stage lights. The fingers that would never work right again. Could he really do this? Could he play in front of people and not fall apart? His hand wasn't strong enough for most of the great piano pieces. The difficult passages would destroy him. 20 minutes, Blackwood said, checking his expensive gold watch. "The donors will be here at 6 o'clock. You better decide fast, tuner boy." The manager turned and walked away. The other workers followed him, still whispering and pointing at Marcus. A few kept their phones out, waiting to record what would happen next. Marcus stood alone on the stage. The piano waited behind him. His tool bag sat on the floor. 20 minutes. That's all he had to decide if he was going to fight or run. He sat down on the edge of the stage and put his head in his hands. His left hand throbbed with pain. It always hurt more when he was stressed. Marcus pressed his thumb into the scars, trying to make the ache go away. What could he possibly play that would impress rich people who had heard the best musicians in the world? His technique was broken. His left hand couldn't handle fast passages anymore. Anything too difficult would expose his weakness. But maybe that was the point. Maybe he shouldn't try to play like he used to. That Marcus was gone. The accident had killed him just as surely as it killed Sarah. Marcus pulled out his phone and looked at an old photograph. It was him at 25 holding a gold medal. He had just won the Tchaikovsky competition in Moscow. His teacher, old Professor Hartman, stood next to him with tears of joy in his eyes. They both looked so happy, so full of hope for the future. Professor Hartman had died 2 years ago. Marcus hadn't even gone to the funeral. He was too ashamed to face his old teacher as a failure. But he remembered something the professor used to say. "Marcus, music is not about perfect fingers. Any robot can hit the right notes. Music is about the soul. It's about truth. The greatest artists are the ones who have suffered and lived and have something real to say." At the time, Marcus thought that was just nice words. He was young and cocky, and his hands could do anything. He didn't need soul. He had technique. Now he understood what the professor meant. Now he had suffered. Now he had lived through things that changed him forever. Did he have something real to say? Could his broken hands tell a story that perfect hands couldn't? There was a soft knock on the stage door. Marcus looked up and saw a young woman peeking in. She was one of the stagehands, maybe 22 or 23 years old. Her name tag said Elena. "Hi," she said quietly. "I don't mean to bother you, but I wanted to tell you something." Marcus waited. Elena walked closer. She held out her phone. "I recorded you playing before Mr. Blackwood came in and started yelling. I hope that's okay." Marcus felt embarrassed. "You don't have to, just listen," Elena said. She pressed play on her phone. The sound of Marcus's playing filled the air. It was the Rachmaninoff he had played just minutes ago. Marcus listened with a critical ear, hearing every mistake his left hand made. The stumbles, the weak notes, the passages where his fingers couldn't move fast enough. But Elena was right. There was something there, something in the music that went beyond technique. It was raw and real and full of emotion. It didn't sound like a competition performance. It sounded like a human being pouring his heart out through the piano keys. "That doesn't sound like noise to me," Elena said when the recording ended. "That sounds like someone who really understands music, who really feels it." Marcus looked at the young woman. She had kind eyes. "Thank you," he said, "but I don't think I can do this. My hand is too damaged. I'll just embarrass myself." "Maybe," Elena said with a shrug. "Or maybe you'll show everyone that music isn't about being perfect. Maybe you'll show them something real for once." She walked away, leaving Marcus alone again with his thoughts and his broken hand and his impossible choice. 15 minutes until the donors arrived. Marcus stood up and walked back to the piano. He sat on the bench and looked at the keys. What could he play? What music could his damaged hand still make? Then it came to him. Beethoven. The last piano sonata Beethoven ever wrote, Sonata number 32. The composer had written it when he was completely deaf. He couldn't hear the music except inside his head. But he wrote it anyway because he had something to say that went beyond sound. It was a piece about transcendence, about rising above suffering, about finding light in darkness. Marcus knew this sonata by heart. He had played it many times when he was young. But back then he didn't understand it. He played it perfectly but without meaning. Now with his broken hand and his scarred heart, maybe he could finally play it the way it was meant to be played. He put his hands on the keys and started to practice. His left hand struggled with some of the passages. But Marcus found ways to work around the problems. He changed the fingering. He used the pedal to cover the weak spots. He leaned more on his right hand for the melody. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. 10 minutes left. Marcus heard voices outside the hall. The donors were starting to arrive. Rich people in expensive clothes expecting to see a piano tuner fail and make a fool of himself. His heart pounded. His left hand shook. Every instinct told him to run, to grab his tool bag and escape through the back door and never come back. But Marcus stayed on the bench. He kept his hands on the keys. He thought about Sarah and how much she had believed in him. He thought about Professor Hartman and his lessons about truth and soul. He thought about the last 5 years of hiding and being afraid and pretending he was okay when he was broken inside. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to let people see who he really was, scars and all. The main doors opened and people started filing into the concert hall. Marcus heard Blackwood's voice greeting them, full of fake charm. He heard laughter and the clink of champagne glasses. "Ladies and gentlemen," Blackwood's voice boomed. "Before we begin our reception, I have a special treat for you. Our piano tuner believes he can play. Let's see if he's right." More laughter, mean anticipating laughter. The laughter of people who expected entertainment at someone else's expense. Marcus looked at his left hand one more time. The scars, the stiff fingers, the hand that had betrayed him and stolen his dreams. Then he took a deep breath, placed both hands on the keys, and began to play. The first notes of Beethoven's Sonata No. 32 filled the concert hall. They were quiet at first, gentle like someone whispering a secret. Marcus kept his eyes closed. He didn't want to see the faces of the rich people watching him. He didn't want to see Blackwood's smug smile. He just wanted to focus on the music. His right hand carried the melody while his left hand provided support. In the beginning, the piece was simple enough that his damaged hand could keep up. But Marcus knew the hard parts were coming. The parts where both hands had to move fast and work together perfectly. In the audience, about 30 people had gathered. They stood near the front of the hall, holding glasses of champagne and small plates of fancy food. Most of them were older, dressed in expensive clothes and jewelry. These were people who donated thousands of dollars to the concert hall every year. They expected excellence. They expected perfection. Richard Blackwood stood off to the side with his arms crossed. He was waiting for Marcus to fail. He had a little smile on his face like someone watching a mouse trapped in a corner. But as the music continued, Blackwood's smile started to fade. The sound coming from the piano wasn't what he expected. Yes, it was rough in places. Yes, there were mistakes. But there was something else, too. Something that made him uncomfortable. It was emotion. Real raw human emotion. At the front of the crowd stood an elderly woman with white hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore pearls and a dark blue dress that probably cost more than Marcus's car. Her name was Margaret Wentworth, and she was the most important person in the room. She ran the concert hall's board of directors. Her family had donated millions of dollars over the years. When Mrs. Wentworth spoke, everyone listened. She had come to this early reception expecting to be bored. She attended hundreds of concerts every year. Most of them blurred together in her memory. Perfect technique, empty hearts. Musicians who could hit every note but said nothing with the music. But this was different. Mrs. Wentworth found herself leaning forward, her champagne glass forgotten in her hand. Who was this man playing, and why had she never heard of him? On stage, Marcus moved into the second section of the sonata. This was where it got harder. The music became more complex. Both hands had to dance across the keys in a conversation. In his old life, Marcus could have played this part in his sleep. Now it was a battle. His left hand started to struggle. The fingers didn't move fast enough. They hit wrong notes. They stumbled over passages that should have been smooth. Marcus felt sweat on his forehead. His damaged hand was starting to hurt badly. The old pain was coming back, shooting up his wrist and into his arm. He could stop now. He could stand up and apologize and grab his tools and run away. Nobody would blame him. They could all see his hand wasn't working right, but Marcus didn't stop. Instead, he did something he had never done in his old performing life. He changed the music. Where his left hand couldn't play the fast notes, he played slower ones instead. Where the original music called for both hands to play together, he let his right hand do most of the work and used his left hand just for emphasis. He was rewriting Beethoven in real time, adapting the music to fit his broken body. It should have sounded terrible. It should have sounded like a butchered mess, but somehow it didn't. Somehow it sounded like truth. The music spoke of struggle, of fighting against something that couldn't be beaten, of accepting limitation and finding beauty anyway. Every wrong note told a story. Every moment where his hand failed became part of the narrative. In the audience, Mrs. Wentworth felt tears sting her eyes. She was 83 years old, and she had thought she knew everything about music. But this performance was teaching her something new. Music didn't have to be perfect to be profound. Sometimes the cracks were where the light got in. Next to her, a younger man named David Chen whispered, "Mother, is he actually changing the notes?" Mrs. Wentworth's son was a music professor at the local university. He had a good ear. He could hear what Marcus was doing. "Yes," Mrs. Wentworth whispered back. "He's adapting it." "Because his hand can't play it the original way." "That's sacrilege," David said. "You can't just rewrite Beethoven, can't you?" his mother asked. Beethoven was deaf when he wrote this. He was already transcending his limitations. Maybe this young man is doing the same thing. David fell silent, listening more carefully now. On stage, Marcus reached the end of the first movement. There was supposed to be a pause here before moving on to the second movement. He took his hands off the keys and flexed his left hand, trying to get blood flowing back into the stiff fingers. The pain was intense now. He wasn't sure he could finish the piece, but when he looked up at the audience, something strange happened. These rich people who had come to watch him fail weren't laughing anymore. They weren't whispering cruel jokes. They were just watching him with quiet, focused attention. And in the back of the hall, Marcus saw Elena, the stagehand. She was supposed to be working, but she had stopped to listen. When their eyes met, she gave him a small nod of encouragement. Marcus put his hands back on the keys and started the second movement. This part of the sonata was slower, more meditative. It was supposed to sound like a song without words, like someone singing a prayer or a lullaby. Marcus let his right hand carry the melody while his left hand played simple, supportive notes underneath. This he could do. His damaged hand didn't need to be fast here. It just needed to be present, adding depth to the sound. And as Marcus played, something shifted inside him. He stopped thinking about technique. He stopped worrying about mistakes. He just let the music flow through him like water. He thought about Sarah and how much he missed her. He thought about all the dreams that died in that car crash. He thought about 5 years of grief and shame and hiding. All of it went into the music. The melody sang of loss, but it also sang of survival. It was sad, yes, but not hopeless. It was the sound of someone who had been broken but refused to stay broken. Someone who kept getting up every time life knocked him down. The second movement was the heart of the sonata, and Marcus poured his entire heart into it. His left hand hurt so badly now that he wanted to cry, but he kept playing. Every note was a small victory against the pain, against the limitation, against the voice in his head that said he would never be a musician again. In the audience, several people were openly crying now. A woman in a red dress had tears running down her cheeks. A man in a dark suit took off his glasses to wipe his eyes. Even David Chen, the skeptical music professor, looked moved. Only Richard Blackwood still looked angry. He could see that his plan was backfiring. He had wanted to humiliate the piano tuner. Instead, he was losing control of the situation. The donors weren't laughing at Marcus. They were relating to him. They were falling in love with his playing. Blackwood pulled out his phone and sent a quick text to his assistant. "Get security ready. This needs to end now." But before security could arrive, Marcus was moving into the third and final movement of the sonata. This was the most difficult part, the most technically demanding section. Long rolling passages that required both hands to work in perfect coordination. Jumps across the keyboard. Rapid scales and arpeggios. There was no way Marcus could play it as written. His left hand would never make it through, so he didn't even try. Instead, Marcus played a simplified version. He stripped away the technical fireworks and focused on the essence of the music. The melody, the harmony, the emotional arc of the piece. He made the music smaller and more intimate. Where Beethoven had written a grand finale meant for a huge concert hall, Marcus played something that sounded like a personal confession. Quiet, honest, direct. It wasn't what anyone expected, but it was perfect. The music built slowly, gaining intensity not through speed or volume, but through emotional depth. Each phrase led to the next, like a story reaching its climax. Marcus's damaged left hand could barely keep up, but it didn't matter anymore. The struggle was part of the performance. The limitation was part of the message. Near the end, there was a section where both hands were supposed to play powerful chords together. Marcus knew his left hand wasn't strong enough for this. The hand would fail him here for sure, but he played the chords anyway. His left hand hit them weakly, painfully. You could hear the difference between his strong right hand and his weak left hand. The balance was all wrong. The power was missing, yet somehow this made it more moving. It sounded like someone climbing a mountain with an injured leg, like someone crossing a finish line after a marathon, exhausted and barely able to stand. It was triumph mixed with struggle, victory mixed with limitation, and then came the final chord. Marcus brought both hands down on the keys together. His left hand shook. His fingers barely made any sound at all, but his right hand was strong enough for both of them. The chord rang out in the silent hall and then slowly faded away. Marcus lifted his hands from the piano and sat very still. His whole body was trembling. His left hand felt like it was on fire. He had pushed it further than he had in 5 years. He could barely feel his fingers anymore. For a moment, there was complete silence in the hall. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The sound of the last chord still seemed to hang in the air like smoke. Marcus waited for the laughter, for the criticism, for Blackwood to tell him he had failed and to get out, but the laughter never came. Instead, someone started clapping. It was slow and steady, the sound of one pair of hands coming together again and again. Marcus looked up and saw Mrs. Margaret Wentworth standing in the front row applauding. Tears were running down her wrinkled cheeks. Then her son David stood and joined her, clapping harder. Then the woman in the red dress. Then the man in the dark suit. One by one, every person in the audience rose to their feet and began to applaud. It wasn't polite applause. It wasn't the kind of clapping you did because you were supposed to. This was real. This was people who had been moved by something genuine and wanted to show their appreciation. The sound grew louder and louder until it filled the entire concert hall. People were shouting, "Bravo!" A few were still crying. Elena, the stagehand, was clapping so hard her hands must have hurt. Marcus sat at the piano in shock. He couldn't believe what was happening. He had expected humiliation. He had expected failure. Instead, he was receiving the kind of ovation he hadn't heard since his competition days. Mrs. Wentworth walked toward the stage, still clapping. The other donors parted to let her through. She climbed the small stairs at the side of the stage and walked over to where Marcus sat. "Young man," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "What is your name?" Marcus stood up quickly. His legs felt weak. "Marcus Chen, ma'am." Mrs. Wentworth's eyes went wide. She put her hand to her mouth. "The Marcus Chen? The young pianist who won the Tchaikovsky competition? The one who disappeared 5 years ago?" Marcus nodded, unable to speak. How did she know about him? He thought everyone had forgotten. "My dear boy," Mrs. Wentworth said, taking his hands in hers. "The entire classical music world has wondered what happened to you. You were going to be one of the greats. And then you just vanished. Where have you been?" Marcus looked down at his scarred left hand, still held in Mrs. Wentworth's gentle grip. "There was an accident," he said quietly. "My hand was injured. I couldn't play anymore, so I became a piano tuner instead." Mrs. Wentworth looked at his hand and understood immediately. "Oh, my dear, I'm so sorry." She turned to face the audience, still holding Marcus's hands. "Do you all see this? This is Marcus Chen, one of the finest young pianists of his generation, and your manager has had him tuning pianos instead of playing them." She turned her sharp gaze on Richard Blackwood, who had been trying to blend into the background. "Richard, come here, please." Blackwood walked slowly toward the stage. His face had lost all its color. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. "Richard," Mrs. Wentworth said in a voice that could cut glass, "would you care to explain to me why one of the most talented musicians alive is working as a technician in our hall?" "I didn't know who he was," Blackwood said weakly. "He never said anything. He just does his job and leaves." Because you never bothered to ask, Mrs. Wentworth said. Because you look down on the working people here. You treat them as invisible, as beneath you. She let go of Marcus's hands and walked closer to Blackwood. Even though she was a small elderly woman and he was a tall man, she seemed much bigger and more powerful in that moment. I was told about what happened earlier, Mrs. Wentworth continued. How you mocked this young man. How you set up this cruel test to humiliate him in front of our donors. How you bet him that you would kneel and apologize if he could play well. Blackwood's face went from white to red. Mrs. Wentworth, You were just being a bully, she said. And now you have a choice. You can keep your promise and apologize to Mr. Chen properly, or you can pack up your office and leave tonight. The other donors murmured their agreement. Several of them nodded firmly. They had seen Blackwood's cruelty and they didn't approve. Blackwood looked around desperately, hoping someone would defend him. But every face was against him. He had gone too far this time. Slowly, painfully, Richard Blackwood lowered himself to one knee on the stage floor. His expensive suit pants touched the dusty wood. His face burned with shame. Behind him, someone had their phone out recording the whole thing. Mr. Chen, Blackwood said through gritted teeth. I apologize for my behavior. You are clearly a talented musician and I was wrong to mock you. The words sounded forced and insincere, but Mrs. Wentworth nodded in satisfaction anyway. Thank you, Richard. You may stand now. Blackwood got to his feet quickly, brushing off his knees. He looked like he wanted to run from the room. Now, Mrs. Wentworth said, turning back to Marcus with a warm smile. We have a problem, Mr. Chen. Our soloist for tonight's concert, Viktor Kozlov, has abandoned us. He had an argument with the conductor and flew back to Moscow this afternoon. We have a sold-out house arriving in 3 hours and no one to perform. She paused, looking at Marcus with hopeful eyes. Would you consider playing for us tonight? I suspect our audience would be deeply honored to hear you. Marcus felt panic rise in his chest. Play a full concert? In front of hundreds of people? Mrs. Wentworth, I can't play Victor's program. My hand isn't strong enough for most of those pieces. Then play something else, she said simply. Play music that your hand can manage. Play music that means something to you. After what we just heard, I think that would be far more valuable than technical perfection anyway. David Chen spoke up from the audience. Mother's right. I teach music history at the university. I could help you put together a program quickly. We could focus on composers who wrote for limited pianists. Beethoven wrote for himself when he was deaf. Ravel wrote pieces for one-handed pianists after World War I. There's a whole repertoire of music about overcoming limitation. Marcus looked at all the hopeful faces staring at him, Mrs. Wentworth, David, Elena, the donors who had been moved by his performance. Even some of the stage crew had gathered to listen. Could he really do this? Could he perform a full concert after 5 years of hiding? His left hand was already throbbing from the short piece he had just played. A full program would push it to the breaking point. But then Marcus thought about something Professor Hartman used to say. The music doesn't need you to be perfect, Marcus. It just needs you to be honest. Maybe that's what the world needed right now. Not another technically perfect performance by a healthy pianist, but something honest, something real, something that showed other people that you could be broken and still create beauty. Okay, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'll do it. The donors erupted in applause again. Mrs. Wentworth hugged him like he was her own grandson. David Chen rushed to the stage to start planning the program with him. Only Richard Blackwood stood apart, his face dark with anger and humiliation. He had tried to destroy Marcus and ended up destroying himself instead. As he watched the celebration, he knew his days at the Grandeur Concert Hall were numbered. But Marcus didn't notice Blackwood anymore. He was too busy talking with David about which pieces he could still play. His mind was racing with possibilities. Music he hadn't thought about in years. Pieces that had new meaning now that he understood suffering. Elena brought him a bottle of water and a pack of ice for his swollen left hand. You were amazing, she said with a huge smile. I knew you had it in you. Thank you for recording that earlier piece, Marcus told her. For reminding me that I still had something worth sharing. You're going to need help getting ready for tonight, Elena said. I can be your stage manager if you want. Make sure everything runs smoothly. Marcus felt overwhelmed by everyone's kindness. 5 years of isolation, and now suddenly people were offering to help him. It was too much. but it was also exactly what he needed. Marcus sat in a small dressing room backstage, staring at himself in the mirror. He looked different than he had that morning. His eyes were brighter. His face had color in it. For the first time in 5 years, he looked alive. His left hand lay on the counter in front of him, wrapped in ice. The swelling had gone down a little, but the pain was still there. A constant reminder of his limitations. Marcus flexed the fingers slowly, watching them move in the mirror. 3 of them were stiff. The scars across his palm looked angry and red. There was a knock on the door. David Chen came in carrying a stack of music books. He was about 40 years old with kind eyes and a friendly smile. As a music professor, he knew everything about classical piano repertoire. "Okay," David said, setting the books down. "I've been thinking about what you can play tonight. We need about 90 minutes of music. That's standard for a solo recital. We can do 2 halves with an intermission in between." Marcus nodded. His mouth felt dry. 90 minutes of music. Could his hand survive that long? "The key," David continued, "is choosing pieces that play to your strengths. Your right hand is still excellent, so we want music where the right hand carries most of the melody, and the left hand just provides support." He opened one of the books. "Let's start with Beethoven. You already know the Sonata number 32. That's about 30 minutes. We could use that for the first half." "The whole thing?" Marcus asked. "I only played the beginning earlier." "You'll be fine," David said confidently. "You understand the piece now. You have something to say with it. That's more important than perfect technique." Marcus wasn't so sure, but he nodded anyway. "For the second half," David said, flipping through another book, "I'm thinking Ravel. Do you know his piano concerto for the left hand?" Marcus shook his head. "I've heard of it, but I never learned it. Ravel wrote it for Paul Wittgenstein, a pianist who lost his right arm in World War I. The entire piece is written for left hand only." "It's brilliant music, but I can't play it," Marcus said, holding up his damaged left hand. "My left hand is the problem." David smiled. "I know, but here's the thing. You could reverse it. Play it with your right hand instead. It would be a mirror image of the original. A one-handed piece played by the other hand." Marcus thought about this. It was creative, bold, maybe even a little crazy. Would that work musically? With some adjustments, yes. I could help you adapt it. And it would make a powerful statement. Music about overcoming disability, played by someone who has overcome his own disability in a different way. Marcus felt excitement building despite his nervousness. This was the kind of artistic choice his old self would never have made. Back then, he only cared about playing things perfectly as written. Now he was learning that sometimes you had to break the rules to find the truth. "What else?" Marcus asked. David pulled out another book. Scriabin. His early preludes are beautiful, and most of them are technically manageable. We could choose 4 or 5 of them. Short pieces that show different moods. They spent the next hour going through music, making decisions about what to include in the program. Every choice was based on what Marcus's damaged hand could handle. But instead of feeling limited, Marcus felt liberated. He wasn't trying to be the pianist he used to be. He was becoming a different kind of pianist, one who had something unique to offer. While they worked, Elena came in with food. "You need to eat," she said, setting down sandwiches and fruit. "It's going to be a long night." Marcus realized he was starving. He hadn't eaten since breakfast. The sandwich tasted amazing. As he ate, Elena told him what was happening in the concert hall. "Word is spreading fast," she said. "Someone posted a video from earlier on social media, the part where you were playing and then Blackwood apologizing. It's already been viewed thousands of times." Marcus felt his stomach clench. "People are watching me fail?" "No," Elena said firmly. "People are watching you succeed. The comments are all positive. Everyone is talking about the piano tuner who turned out to be a famous musician. They're calling you inspirational." She showed him her phone. The video was grainy but clear enough. Marcus could see himself playing, could hear the emotion in the music. The comments below were full of heart emojis and supportive words. "Amazing performance. This made me cry. Why isn't this man famous? I need to hear more from him." There were already news articles being written. Mystery pianist resurfaces after 5 years. Classical music star found working as piano tuner. Emotional performance goes viral. Marcus didn't know how to feel about all this attention. Part of him wanted to hide, but another part, the part that had been silent for 5 years, wanted to be seen again. "The concert is sold out," Elena continued. When people heard you were playing instead of Viktor Kozlov, ticket sales went crazy. There's even a waiting list for returned tickets. They're coming to see me fail, Marcus said quietly. No, David said, looking up from the music. They're coming to see you succeed. People are hungry for authenticity, Marcus. They're tired of perfect performances by perfect people. They want to see someone real, someone who has struggled and survived. There was another knock on the door. This time it was Mrs. Wentworth. She came in carrying a garment bag. Mr. Chen, she said warmly, I took the liberty of bringing you something to wear tonight. My late husband was about your size. I think his concert tuxedo would fit you perfectly. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. This woman barely knew him, yet she was treating him with such kindness. Mrs. Wentworth, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank me by giving us a beautiful performance tonight, she said, hanging the garment bag on a hook. And please call me Margaret. She sat down in one of the chairs. I want to tell you something, Marcus. I've been attending concerts at this hall for 60 years. I've heard all the great pianists, Horowitz, Rubinstein, Ashkenazy, all of them. She paused, her old eyes looking distant. Most of those performances blurred together in my memory now. Technically perfect, but emotionally empty. But what you played earlier, that 15 minutes I will never forget, because it was true. It came from your heart and your experience. But I made so many mistakes, Marcus said. The mistakes were part of the beauty, Margaret said. They showed your humanity. They showed your struggle. And that made the moments of triumph even more powerful. She stood up to leave. The world doesn't need another perfect pianist, Marcus. We have plenty of those. What the world needs is your voice. Your truth. Promise me you'll share that tonight. I promise, Marcus said. After Margaret left, Marcus looked at the clock. It was 7:30. The concert started at 8. 30 minutes left. His left hand had stopped throbbing as much. The ice had helped. But Marcus knew it would hurt again once he started playing. He would have to push through the pain. There was no other choice. David helped him organize the music sheets in the right order. Elena made sure his tuxedo looked perfect. Other staff members kept popping in to wish him luck. Even some of the musicians from the orchestra came by to say they would be in the audience supporting him. The only person who didn't come was Richard Blackwood. Marcus heard later that the manager had locked himself in his office, already writing his resignation letter. The video of his humiliation had spread everywhere. By tomorrow, every major classical music organization would know about it. His career was finished. Marcus should have felt happy about Blackwood's downfall. The man had been cruel and deserved what he got. But instead, Marcus just felt tired. Revenge wasn't satisfying. All he wanted now was to play the piano and share something meaningful with people. At 7:45, Elena came to walk him to the stage. The hall is packed, she said. Every seat is full. People are even standing in the back. Marcus's hands started shaking. Stage fright. He hadn't felt this in years because he hadn't performed in years. His stomach twisted into knots. I don't know if I can do this, he whispered. Elena stopped and looked at him seriously. Marcus, you've already done the hard part. You've already proven you can still play. Now you just need to share that with more people. That's all a concert is, sharing your gift. What if I freeze up? What if my hand gives out completely? Then you'll deal with it, Elena said simply. You'll adapt. Like you did earlier. You've already shown you can think on your feet and make changes when you need to. She was right. Marcus had already faced his biggest fear earlier when he played for the Donors. This was just more of the same. Bigger audience, same mission. Share the truth through music. They walked through the backstage corridors toward the wings. Marcus could hear the murmur of hundreds of people talking in the concert hall, the sound of programs rustling, coughs, laughter, the orchestra tuning their instruments even though there would be no orchestra tonight. Just him and the piano. Elena squeezed his arm. I'll be right here in the wings the whole time. If you need anything, just look at me and I'll help you. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice to speak. The house lights dimmed. The audience noise faded to silence. This was it. The moment Marcus Chen returned to the concert stage after 5 years of hiding. He walked out from the wings into the bright stage lights. The audience was just a dark mass beyond the lights. He couldn't see individual faces, just shapes and shadows, but he could feel their attention on him. Hundreds of eyes watching, hundreds of people waiting to see if he could deliver on the promise of that viral video. Marcus walked to the piano and sat on the bench. He adjusted the seat height. He flexed his fingers. He took 3 deep breaths, just like Professor Hartman had taught him years ago. Then he placed his hands on the keys and began to play Beethoven's Sonata No. 32. The music filled the hall immediately. Clear and honest, just like before, Marcus kept his eyes closed and let himself fall into the sound. His right hand sang the melody while his left hand provided the foundation. When the difficult passages came, he adapted just as he had practiced. He made the music fit his limitations rather than trying to force his hands to do the impossible. The first movement flowed by. Marcus was so focused on the music that he forgot about the audience. He forgot about the pressure. He forgot about his fear. There was only the piano and the notes and the story he was telling through Beethoven's genius composition. When he finished the first movement and paused, he heard complete silence from the audience. Not a cough, not a rustle. They were completely absorbed in the performance. The second movement was the emotional heart of the piece. Marcus poured everything into it. All his grief over Sarah, all his pain from the accident, all his loneliness from 5 years of isolation, but also his hope, his survival, his determination to find beauty even in brokenness. Several times his left hand cramped up and he had to adjust his fingering on the fly. But the audience couldn't tell. They just heard a musician sharing his soul with them. The third movement was the triumph, the resolution, the transcendence. Marcus played it with joy despite the pain shooting through his left hand. This was what Beethoven had discovered when he was deaf and dying. That music could lift you above suffering. That art could transform pain into something meaningful. As Marcus played the final chords, he felt tears running down his own cheeks. He had done it. He had made it through the first half, and it had been good. Not perfect, but good, real, true. The last note faded away, and for a moment there was silence. Then the applause began. It started like a wave and built into a roar. People were on their feet instantly. The ovation was even bigger than the one from the donors earlier. Marcus stood and bowed awkwardly. He wasn't used to this anymore. He had forgotten the rituals of concert performance. But it didn't matter. The audience wasn't judging him on his stage presence. They were thanking him for his honesty. He bowed again and walked off stage to the wings where Elena waited with a huge smile and a bottle of water. "You were incredible," she said, handing him the water. "They love you." Marcus's hands were shaking as he drank. The adrenaline was wearing off and exhaustion was setting in. His left hand was swollen and hot to the touch. He had pushed it hard during that Beethoven sonata. "Do you need ice?" Elena asked, noticing him cradling his hand. "Not yet. I need to warm up for the second half." David Chen appeared, also grinning. "That was fantastic. You made some fascinating interpretive choices in the third movement. Very original." "I couldn't play it as written," Marcus admitted. "I know, and that's what made it special. You found your own voice instead of just copying someone else's interpretation." The intermission was 20 minutes. Marcus spent it in the dressing room, resting his hand and reviewing the music for the second half. The adapted Ravel Concerto, the Scriabin Preludes, a short piece by Satie that was simple enough for his damaged hand but emotionally powerful. All music about limitation and transcendence. All music that said something important about the human condition. When it was time to return to the stage, Marcus felt calmer. He had proven to himself that he could still perform. Now he just needed to finish strong. He walked back out to even bigger applause. The audience had been talking during intermission about what they had witnessed. Word was spreading that this was a special night. A historic night. Marcus sat at the piano again and launched into the Scriabin Preludes. These were shorter pieces, each one like a little jewel. Sad, joyful, mysterious, passionate. Each prelude showed a different facet of human emotion. Marcus played them with sensitivity and care. His damaged left hand managed the simple accompaniment patterns, while his right hand sang the melodies. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every note. After the Scriabin came the Satie. This was music of profound simplicity. Just a few notes carefully placed, like a Japanese ink painting. Beautiful because of what it left out rather than what it included. Marcus played it with reverence. This was music that understood that less could be more, that limitation could be a kind of freedom. Finally came the adapted Ravel Concerto. David had done a brilliant job of flipping it for the right hand. It was still challenging, but Marcus could handle it. The piece was dark and dramatic, telling a story of loss and resilience. As Marcus played, he thought about all the one-armed pianists who had performed this originally. Soldiers who came back from war with missing limbs but refusing to give up music. They had adapted. They had survived. They had created beauty anyway. Marcus was part of that tradition now, not one-armed but damaged. Part of a lineage of musicians who refused to let physical limitations stop them from making art. The concerto built to a powerful climax. Marcus's right hand blazed across the keys while his left hand added punctuation. Small moments of emphasis that proved he still had two hands even if one was broken. The final chord was massive and triumphant. Marcus played it with every ounce of strength he had left. His left hand barely contributed, but it was there. Present. Surviving. When the sound faded, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then the audience exploded. People were cheering, crying, jumping to their feet. The applause went on and on, wave after wave of sound. Marcus stood and bowed deeply. He had made it. He had performed a full concert. His comeback was complete, but more than that, he had discovered something important. He didn't need to be the pianist he used to be. He could be something different, something better, a musician who had been broken and rebuilt stronger, an artist with something real to say to the world. The applause continued for 5 minutes. People were calling for an encore. Marcus looked into the wings at Elena, and she nodded encouragingly. He sat back down at the piano for one final piece. Marcus sat at the piano one more time, his body exhausted but his spirit soaring. The audience had finally quieted down, waiting to hear what he would play as an encore. His left hand was throbbing badly now. Every nerve screamed in protest. But Marcus didn't care. He had come too far to stop now. He closed his eyes and thought about what piece would be right for this moment. Not something showy or technically impressive. Something honest. Something that captured everything this night had meant to him. His fingers found the keys and began to play Eric Satie's Gymnopédie No. 1. It was a simple piece. Just a gentle melody floating over quiet chords. The kind of music that sounded easy but required perfect touch and timing to play beautifully. The first notes drifted through the concert hall like morning. Mist. Soft. Delicate. Peaceful. The audience held their breath, not wanting to disturb the fragile beauty of the sound. Marcus's damaged left hand had just enough strength left to play the simple bass notes. His right hand carried the melody with tenderness. This was music about acceptance, about finding peace after struggle, about the quiet moment after the storm has passed. As Marcus played, he thought about Sarah. She would have been so proud of him tonight. She had always believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. She had known he was more than just a technically perfect pianist. She had seen the artist inside him waiting to emerge. He thought about Professor Hartman, who had tried to teach him that music was about the heart, not just the fingers. The old professor had been right all along. It had just taken Marcus 5 years of suffering to understand the lesson. He thought about all the broken people in the audience. Everyone who had ever failed at something. Everyone who had lost a dream. Everyone who felt like they weren't good enough. This simple piece was for them. A message that beauty could exist alongside brokenness. That you didn't need to be perfect to matter. The last note faded into silence. Marcus lifted his hands from the keys and sat very still. He was done. Completely spent. He had given everything he had to give. The audience erupted one final time. People were standing and crying and applauding until their hands must have hurt. Marcus stood and bowed, but his legs felt weak. Elena appeared at his side immediately, steadying him as he walked off stage. "You did it," she said, her eyes shining with tears. That was perfect. In the dressing room, Marcus collapsed into a chair. His whole body was shaking from exhaustion and emotion. David came in with a huge smile and a glass of water. "Marcus, that was extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it. You completely reimagined what a piano recital could be." Margaret Wentworth appeared in the doorway with several other board members. "Mr. Chen, we need to talk about your future." But before they could continue, there was a commotion in the hallway. Voices raised in argument. Someone said, "You can't go in there. He's resting." The door burst open and a tall man with wild gray hair pushed past the security guard. He was carrying a video camera and had several people with him. Marcus recognized him immediately. It was James Morrison, one of the most famous music journalists in the country. Marcus Chen, Morrison said breathlessly. I drove 3 hours when I heard you were performing tonight. I had to see it for myself. The lost prodigy returns. He thrust a microphone toward Marcus. How does it feel to be back on stage after 5 years? What happened to you? Why did you disappear? Marcus's mind went blank. He wasn't ready for this. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Margaret stepped forward protectively. Mr. Morrison, this is a private room. You need to leave. The public has a right to know, Morrison insisted. Marcus Chen was one of the most promising pianists of his generation. He vanished without explanation. Now he resurfaces playing as a piano tuner? This is news. It's my life, Marcus finally said quietly. Not news, but Morrison wasn't listening. He was already filming, his camera pointed at Marcus's scarred left hand. Is that why you quit? The injury? What happened? Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. This was too much. He had just played the most important concert of his life, and now he was being ambushed by journalists. He wanted to run, to hide, to disappear again. But Elena stepped between Marcus and the camera. You heard him. This is private. You need to leave now or I'm calling the police. Morrison looked annoyed, but he lowered his camera. Fine, but Marcus, you can't hide anymore. After tonight's performance, everyone is going to want to know your story. You might as well tell it on your own terms. He pulled out a business card and set it on the dressing table. Call me when you're ready to talk. I'll make sure your story is told right. Security finally escorted Morrison and his crew out. The room fell silent. Marcus put his head in his hands. I'm sorry, Margaret said softly. I should have posted security outside your door. That was my fault. It's okay, Marcus said, though it wasn't really. Morrison was right about one thing. The story was out now. The viral video had made sure of that. Marcus couldn't go back to being invisible. Whether he liked it or not, people were going to be watching him now. Over the next hour, various people came to congratulate him. Other musicians, music students from David's University, donors who had been moved by the performance. Each person wanted to shake his hand and tell him how much the concert had meant to them. A young woman in her 20s came in with tears on her face. I'm a violinist, she said. I have arthritis in my hands. The doctors say I'll probably have to stop playing in a few years. Watching you tonight gave me hope that maybe I can find another way to make music. Thank you. An older man told Marcus about his son who had been paralyzed in a swimming accident. He used to play guitar. He thought his music life was over. But after seeing your video, he's been looking into adaptive instruments. You inspired him to try again. Story after story, person after person, all of them touched by Marcus's willingness to be vulnerable on stage. To show his limitations instead of hiding them. To prove that imperfection could be beautiful. Finally, around midnight, the last visitors left. The concert hall grew quiet. Marcus sat alone in the dressing room, staring at his reflection in the mirror. He looked older than 32. The years of grief had left marks on his face that no amount of success could erase. There was a soft knock on the door. Elena peeked in. Most people have left, but there's one more person who wants to see you. She says she's from your past. Marcus's heart skipped. Could it be? He followed Elena out to the empty lobby. And there, standing by the main doors, was a woman with long brown hair and glasses. She was older than he remembered, but Marcus would have known her anywhere. Professor Hartman's daughter, he whispered. Anna. Anna Hartman walked toward him with tears in her eyes. Marcus, I saw the video online. I had to come. They hugged, both of them crying. Anna had been like a sister to him when he studied with her father. When Professor Hartman died, Marcus had been too ashamed to attend the funeral. He had avoided Anna's calls and emails. He had pushed away everyone from his old life. I'm sorry, Marcus said. I should have been there for your father's funeral. I was just so... I understand, Anna said. You were hurting. You needed time. She pulled back to look at him. But Marcus, my father never stopped believing in you. Even after the accident, even after you disappeared. He used to say Marcus will come back when he's ready. And when he does, he'll be a better artist for having suffered. Marcus felt fresh tears on his cheeks. He was right, Anna smiled. He usually was. That's why I came tonight, to tell you that he would be so proud of what you did up there. You finally learned the lesson he tried to teach you. that music isn't about perfection. It's about truth. They talked for another hour, catching up on lost years. Anna was a music therapist now, working with disabled children. She told Marcus about her work, about how music could heal people in ways that medicine couldn't. "You should come visit my center," Anna said. "The kids would love to meet you. Especially after tonight, you're proof that disability doesn't mean the end of music." Marcus promised he would. As Anna left, she handed him a small box. "This was my father's. I want you to have it." Inside the box was Professor Hartman's old metronome, the mechanical kind that clicked back and forth. Marcus remembered that sound from countless lessons, the steady tick-tick-tick keeping time while he practiced. He said the metronome was a reminder that time keeps moving forward. Anna said, "No matter what happens, you keep going, one beat at a time." After Anna left, Marcus sat in the empty lobby holding the metronome. The concert hall was dark now except for a few security lights. Elena had gone home. David had gone home. Everyone had gone home. Marcus was alone with his thoughts and his aching left hand and the metronome that represented time moving forward. He thought about everything that had happened in one day. He had come to the concert hall that morning as a nobody, a piano tuner who had accepted his invisible life. Now he was someone again, not the same person he had been before the accident. Someone different, someone who had something important to say through music. His phone buzzed with notifications, hundreds of them. Friend requests on social media, messages from people he hadn't talked to in years, interview requests from journalists, emails from concert promoters asking about his availability. The world wanted a piece of him now. Marcus felt overwhelmed. This was happening too fast. Just yesterday he was tuning pianos and trying to pay rent. Now everyone wanted him to be a star again. But he wasn't ready for that. He needed time to figure out who this new Marcus was, the Marcus who played with damaged hands and an open heart. He found James Morrison's business card in his pocket. The journalist had been pushy and intrusive, but he was right about one thing. Marcus needed to tell his story on his own terms before someone else told it for him. But not tonight. Tonight he was too tired to think about the future. Tonight he just wanted to sit in this quiet concert hall and remember what it felt like to make music again. Marcus wound up Professor Hartman's metronome and set it on the seat next to him. Tick, tick, tick. The sound was steady and reliable. A heartbeat, a reminder that life goes on. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Margaret Wentworth. "We need to discuss a concert series. Are you interested in becoming an artist in residence at the Grandeur Concert Hall? We want you here permanently." Marcus stared at the message. A permanent position, regular concerts, a chance to rebuild his career on his own terms. It was everything he had lost 5 years ago, offered back to him. But there was a catch. Once he said yes, there would be no going back to his quiet, invisible life. He would be in the spotlight again. People would expect things from him. They would watch him, judge him, compare him to his old self. Could he handle that pressure? Could his damaged hand hold up under regular performance demands? Could he maintain this level of emotional honesty night after night without burning out? Marcus didn't know the answers, but as he sat there listening to the metronome, he realized something important. He didn't need to know all the answers right now. He just needed to take the next step. One note at a time, one concert at a time, one day at a time. He typed back a simple reply to Margaret. "Yes, I'm interested. Let's talk tomorrow." Then he turned off his phone and sat in the peaceful darkness of the concert hall. Outside, the world was buzzing with news of his comeback. Videos were being shared. Articles were being written. Social media was exploding with reactions. But in here it was quiet. Just Marcus and the piano and the metronome counting out the seconds. Tick, tick, tick. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, interviews, negotiations, planning future concerts, dealing with fame, managing expectations. But tonight Marcus just wanted to savor this moment. He walked over to the piano one more time. His left hand was so swollen now that he could barely make a fist. But he placed both hands on the keys anyway and played a single chord. Just one, letting it ring out in the empty hall. The sound was beautiful, imperfect but beautiful. Just like him, just like his life, just like everyone who had ever struggled and survived and found a way to keep creating, despite the pain. Marcus stood up and gathered his things. It was time to go home. Tomorrow would be the first day of his new life. But tonight belonged to the old Marcus and the new Marcus together. The man who had been broken and the man who had learned to make music from the pieces. As he walked toward the exit, he passed Richard Blackwood's office. The lights were off. The door was locked. Blackwood was gone, probably never to return. The man who had tried to humiliate Marcus had destroyed himself instead. Marcus felt no joy at this, just sadness for a person who had let cruelty poison his life. Maybe Blackwood would learn from this. Maybe he would become a better person. Or maybe he would stay bitter and angry forever. Either way, it wasn't Marcus's problem anymore. Elena had left a note taped to the stage door. "You were amazing tonight. I'm proud to know you. See you tomorrow. Your stage manager, Elena." Marcus smiled. He had a stage manager now. He had an artist-in-residence position waiting. He had a future again. The night air was cool on his face as he stepped outside. The city was quiet at this late hour. Streetlights reflected off wet pavement from an earlier rain. Marcus walked slowly toward his car, his tool bag hanging from his shoulder. He would probably still do some piano tuning. Not because he needed the money anymore, but because he liked the work. There was something honest about using his hands to make instruments sound better, something humble about serving other musicians. But now he would also perform. He would teach. He would inspire. He would show people that you could fall down and get back up, that you could be broken and still create beauty. That limitation could be transformed into art. As Marcus drove home through the empty streets, he thought about Sarah one more time. She had died 5 years ago, but in a way she had saved him tonight, because Marcus had played with the pain of losing her, and that pain had made the music real. He would never forget her. The grief would always be there. But now it was something he could use, something he could transform through art. Beethoven had done it. Ravel had done it. All the great composers had turned their suffering into something meaningful. Now Marcus was part of that tradition, not because he was technically perfect, but because he had lived and suffered and survived, and because he was willing to be vulnerable enough to share that with the world. When Marcus finally reached his small apartment, it was almost 2 a.m. He was exhausted. His left hand was so swollen that he could barely grip his keys, but he was happy. Deeply, genuinely happy for the first time in 5 years. He set Professor Hartman's metronome on his desk next to a photo of Sarah. 2 reminders, one of time moving forward, one of love that never really dies. Then Marcus Chen, the piano tuner who became a pianist again, fell asleep with a smile on his face, dreaming of music yet to be played. Marcus woke up to his phone ringing. Sunlight streamed through his apartment windows. For a moment he couldn't remember where he was or why his left hand hurt so badly. Then the memories of last night flooded back. The concert. The standing ovations. The viral videos, everything. His phone kept ringing. It was Margaret Wentworth. "Good morning, Marcus," she said cheerfully. "I hope you slept well. We need to meet today. There are some people who want to talk to you about your future." Marcus looked at the clock. It was already 11 in the morning. He had slept through most of the morning. His body was still exhausted from the emotional and physical demands of the concert. "What kind of people?" Marcus asked, his voice still rough from sleep. "Record label executives, concert promoters, the director of the National Arts Foundation. Everyone wants to meet the pianist who came back from nowhere." Margaret paused. "But Marcus, you don't have to meet with any of them if you're not ready. This is your career. You control the pace." Marcus appreciated her understanding. "Can we meet this afternoon? I need some time to wake up and process everything." "Of course. Come to my office at the concert hall at 3 o'clock. And Marcus, bring Elena if you want. You're going to need someone to help manage all these requests." After hanging up, Marcus sat on the edge of his bed and looked at his left hand. It was still swollen, the fingers stiff and sore. He flexed them carefully, feeling the familiar ache. This hand would never be normal again. But last night it had been enough. More than enough. His phone showed 87 missed calls and over 300 text messages. Marcus scrolled through them in disbelief. Old friends from the Vienna Conservatory. Musicians he had performed with years ago. Students he had studied alongside. All of them reaching out to congratulate him or reconnect. There were also messages from strangers. People who had seen the videos online and wanted to share their own stories of overcoming disability or loss. A mother whose daughter had cerebral palsy and loved music. A veteran who had lost his leg in combat and was learning to play drums again. A teacher who showed the video to her students as inspiration. Marcus read message after message, feeling overwhelmed by the response. His private struggle had somehow become public inspiration. People were seeing themselves in his story, finding hope in his comeback. One message stood out. It was from Viktor Kozlov, the famous pianist who had walked out on last night's concert. "Marcus Chen, I remember you from Vienna. You were brilliant even then. I walked out yesterday because I was being a spoiled child. You showed me what real artistry looks like. Thank you for the reminder. I hope we can perform together someday." Marcus stared at this message for a long time. Viktor Kozlov was one of the biggest names in classical piano, and he was asking to perform with Marcus. The world had truly turned upside down. He got up and made coffee, his mind spinning with possibilities and fears. What if last night was just a lucky accident? What if he couldn't repeat that level of performance? What if his hand got worse and he couldn't play at all anymore? But then Marcus remembered Professor Hartman's voice. Stop worrying about what might go wrong. Focus on what you can do right now, one day at a time, one note at a time. He spent the next few hours answering messages from people who really mattered. Anna Hartman, old friends from music school, the young violinist with arthritis who had come to his dressing room. He ignored the journalists and promoters for now. Those could wait. At 2:30, Marcus drove to the Grandeur Concert Hall. The building looked different in daylight. Less intimidating, almost welcoming. He parked in the back and walked in through the stage door, just like he had done hundreds of times as a piano tuner. But everything felt different now. The security guard smiled and waved. "Great concert last night, Mr. Chen." My wife cried through the whole thing. Staff members stopped to congratulate him as he walked through the hallways. People knew his name now. He wasn't invisible anymore. Elena met him outside Margaret's office. She looked excited and a little nervous. "I got a call from Mrs. Wentworth this morning. She offered me a full-time position as your stage manager. If you want me, that is." Marcus smiled. "Of course I want you. You're the one who believed in me from the start." "Then I accept," Elena said with a huge grin. "Okay, so I've been doing research all morning. The video from yesterday has been viewed over 2 million times. You're trending on every social media platform. Major newspapers are running stories about you, and you have interview requests from basically everyone." She handed Marcus a folder stuffed with papers. "These are just the most important ones. CBS Morning Show wants you for next week. NPR wants a full interview. The New York Times is writing a feature article. And that's just the media. I haven't even gotten to the performance offers yet." Marcus felt dizzy looking at all the papers. This was too much. "How do I handle all this?" "We'll figure it out together," Elena said. "But first, let's see what Mrs. Wentworth has to say." Margaret's office was elegant but warm, filled with photographs of famous musicians who had performed at the concert hall over the decades. She sat behind a large wooden desk with 3 other people in the room. They all stood when Marcus entered. "Marcus, thank you for coming," Margaret said. "Let me introduce you to some people. This is Robert Chen. No relation to you, I think, from Steinway Records. This is Patricia Vance from the Classical Music Association. And this is Dr. James Liu from the National Arts Foundation." Each person shook Marcus's hand and congratulated him on the concert. Then they all sat down around Margaret's desk. Robert Chen spoke first. He was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and an expensive suit. "Marcus, I'll be direct. We want to sign you to a recording contract. We believe your story and your unique approach to performance would resonate with a huge audience." "What kind of contract?" Marcus asked cautiously. 3 albums over 3 years. We'll give you complete artistic control over repertoire and interpretation. We want you to record the music that matters to you, the way you want to play it. No pressure to sound like anyone else." Patricia Vance leaned forward. She was an older woman with kind eyes. "The Classical Music Association wants to feature you in our Rising Stars series. We showcase musicians who are bringing fresh perspectives to classical music. Your story fits perfectly. We would arrange a 10-city tour next season." 10 cities? Marcus felt panic rising. "My hand can barely handle 1 concert. How could I do 10? "We'd space them out," Patricia said gently. 1 concert per month, with plenty of rest in between, and we'd work with you to design programs that are manageable for your hand. This isn't about pushing you to failure. It's about sharing your gift with more people." Dr. Liu was a younger man, maybe 40, with an enthusiastic manner. "The National Arts Foundation has a different proposal. We want to fund a documentary about your comeback. Not just about the concert, but about the whole journey. The accident, the years of struggle, how you found your way back to music." A documentary? Marcus didn't know how he felt about cameras following him around. It would be powerful, Dr. Liu continued. So many artists face career-ending injuries or setbacks. Your story shows that endings can become new beginnings. We think it could inspire millions of people, not just musicians. Marcus looked at Elena, who was taking notes on everything. Then he looked at Margaret, who was watching him with a gentle smile. This is all very generous, Marcus said slowly. But I need to be honest. 24 hours ago, I was tuning pianos for a living. I had accepted that my performing career was over. Now you're offering me recording contracts and tours and documentaries. It's overwhelming. We understand, Margaret said. That's why I wanted you to hear all the offers at once, so you can make informed decisions without feeling pressured by each individual opportunity. Robert from the record label spoke up. Marcus, you don't have to decide anything today. Take your time. Think about what you want your career to look like. We're not going anywhere. But Patricia looked more concerned. Although I will say the interest in you is very high right now. In the music business, momentum matters. If you wait too long, the public attention might fade. Marcus felt the weight of this truth. He had gone viral, yes, but viral moments didn't last forever. If he wanted to build a real career from this opportunity, he needed to act while people still cared. Can I ask a question? Elena said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. What support are you offering Marcus? Not just money or publicity, but actual support. Physical therapy for his hand. Mental health counseling if he needs it. A team to help manage his schedule so he doesn't burn out. There was a moment of silence. Then Robert nodded slowly. That's a fair question. And yes, we would include all of that in the contract. We want Marcus to have a long, sustainable career. Not just one comeback concert that ruins his hand permanently. Same here, Patricia said. The Classical Music Association has wellness programs for all our artists. We learned the hard way that pushing musicians too hard destroys them. We'd work with Marcus's doctors to make sure every performance is safe for him. Marcus felt grateful for Elena's question. She was already protecting him, already thinking about his long-term well-being. Here's what I want, Marcus said finally. I want to perform. I want to share music with people. Over the next few weeks, Marcus's life became a whirlwind of activity. He gave the master class at the university, where 20 talented piano students hung on his every word. He started recording his first album, carefully choosing pieces that his hand could manage but that still challenged him artistically. The documentary crew followed him everywhere. At first, Marcus felt self-conscious about the cameras, but the director, a woman named Sophie Martinez, was so gentle and understanding that he soon forgot they were there. Sophie interviewed him about the accident, about Sarah, about the 5 years of depression and isolation. Marcus cried during some of the interviews. It was painful to talk about the darkest parts of his life. But Sophie was right that it was important to tell the whole story. People need to see that comeback isn't easy, Sophie explained. It's not a straight line from tragedy to triumph. It's messy and complicated and full of setbacks. That's what makes it real. One day while filming at the Music Therapy Center, something unexpected happened. Marcus was working with the little girl with leg braces, teaching her a simple song. The girl's mother was watching from the side of the room, tears streaming down her face. After the lesson, the mother approached Marcus. Thank you, she whispered. My daughter has been through so much. Multiple surgeries, years of physical therapy. She always felt broken, but watching you, seeing how you've turned your injury into something beautiful, it's giving her hope. She believes she can do anything now. Marcus couldn't speak. He just hugged the woman while she cried on his shoulder. This was why he had come back to music. Not for fame or success, but for moments like this. To show other broken people that they could still create beauty. 3 months after his comeback concert, Marcus performed his second show at the Grandeur Concert Hall. This time he was prepared. He knew what to expect. The nervousness was still there, but it was manageable. The concert sold out within hours of tickets going on sale. People came from all over the country to hear him play. In the audience were many disabled musicians and their families. People who saw Marcus as proof that limitations didn't mean the end of dreams. Marcus played beautifully that night. His left hand was stronger now from physical therapy. He had learned better ways to manage the pain. But more importantly, he had accepted his limitations. He no longer tried to play like his old self. He played like his new self. And that was enough. After the concert, a line of people waited to meet him. Marcus shook hands and signed programs for over an hour. Each person had a story. Each person had been touched by his music or his journey. An elderly man told Marcus about his wife who had Alzheimer's disease. She doesn't remember most things anymore, but when we played your video, she remembered music. She smiled for the first time in months. Thank you for bringing her back to me, even if just for a little while. A teenager said he had been planning to quit piano after breaking his wrist in a skateboarding accident. But then I saw you play. Now I'm working with a therapist to rebuild my technique. You showed me that injuries don't have to be the end. Story after story, life after life touched by Marcus's willingness to be vulnerable, to show his scars, to prove that broken things could still be beautiful. By the time Marcus finally made it home that night, he was exhausted but deeply fulfilled. Elena had stayed until the end, making sure everything ran smoothly. She had become more than just his stage manager. She was his friend, his advocate, his protector. You did good tonight, Elena said as they stood outside the concert hall. Better than good. You're changing lives, Marcus. We're changing lives, Marcus corrected. I couldn't do any of this without you. Elena smiled. Yes, you could, but I'm glad you don't have to. 6 months after his comeback, Marcus's album was released. It was called Imperfect: A Journey Through Limitation. The cover showed his scarred left hand resting on piano keys. Inside were recordings of Beethoven, Ravel, Scriabin, Satie, and other composers who had written about overcoming struggle. The album received mixed reviews from critics. Some praised it as emotionally powerful and deeply moving. Others criticized the technical imperfections and unconventional interpretations. But the public loved it. The album reached #1 on the classical charts and stayed there for weeks. More importantly, the album reached people who didn't normally listen to classical music. Young people, disabled people, anyone who had ever felt broken or inadequate. They heard Marcus's story in the music and they felt seen. Letters poured in from around the world. A woman in Japan who had given up violin after a stroke wrote to say Marcus's album inspired her to try again. A man in Brazil who had lost his fingers in a factory accident said the music gave him hope. A girl in Australia with cerebral palsy said she was learning piano because of Marcus's example. Each letter reminded Marcus why he had been willing to be vulnerable, why he had shared his pain and his imperfection with the world. Because people needed to know they weren't alone in their struggles. The documentary premiered at a film festival in New York. Marcus attended with Anna, Elena, and Margaret. Watching his own story on a big screen was surreal and emotional. Sophie had done a beautiful job, showing not just the triumph but the years of pain that led to it. When the film ended, the audience gave it a standing ovation. During the Q&A afterwards, person after person stood up to share how the film had affected them, how it had inspired them, how it had changed their perspective on disability and limitation. A man in his 60s stood up, his voice shaking. I'm a surgeon. I had to stop operating last year because of arthritis in my hands. I thought my career was over. I've been depressed ever since. But your film showed me that endings can become new beginnings, that I can find another way to contribute to medicine even if I can't operate anymore. Thank you. Marcus felt tears on his cheeks. This was bigger than music. This was about helping people find meaning after loss, helping them see that their value didn't depend on their physical abilities. 1 year after his comeback concert, Marcus performed at Carnegie Hall in New York. This was the dream venue, the place every classical musician hoped to play. The concert was part of his 5-city tour, and it sold out within minutes. Standing backstage before the performance, Marcus felt the old nervousness return. This was Carnegie Hall. Legends had played here. Giants of music history. What right did he have to stand on this stage with his broken hand and his imperfect technique? But then Marcus remembered the little girl at the music therapy center. The teenager who had decided not to quit piano. The surgeon who found new purpose. All the people who needed to see someone succeed despite limitations. He wasn't playing for critics tonight. He was playing for them. Marcus walked onto the stage of Carnegie Hall to thunderous applause. As he sat at the piano and placed his hands on the keys, he felt Professor Hartman's presence. He felt Sarah's love. He felt the support of everyone who had believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. And then he played, not perfectly, but honestly, with every ounce of heart and soul he possessed. The music poured out of him like water, telling the story of a man who had fallen into darkness and clawed his way back to light. The audience was completely silent, transfixed by the performance. Even the critics who had come ready to judge found themselves moved. Because Marcus wasn't just playing notes, he was sharing truth, raw, vulnerable human truth. When the final chord faded away, there was a moment of perfect silence. Then Carnegie Hall erupted. People stood and cheered and cried. The ovation lasted 10 minutes. Flowers were thrown onto the stage. People in the upper balconies were screaming his name. Marcus stood and bowed, tears streaming down his face. He had made it. From the wreckage of the car accident to this moment, from broken piano tuner to Carnegie Hall, the journey had been long and painful, but it had been worth it. Backstage, Marcus was swarmed by well-wishers, musicians he admired, critics who admitted they had been wrong about him, famous conductors wanting to work with him. But the people Marcus was happiest to see were Anna, Elena, and Margaret. His team, his family. "Your father was right," Marcus told Anna. "Suffering made me a better artist. I just wish it hadn't taken me so long to understand." "You understood exactly when you were ready to understand," Anna said wisely. Not a moment sooner or later. That night, Marcus and his friends celebrated at a quiet restaurant in Manhattan. They toasted to second chances, to new beginnings, to the power of vulnerability, to proving that broken things could still create beauty. As Marcus looked around the table at the people who had supported him, he felt overwhelming gratitude. A year ago, he had been alone and hiding. Now he had purpose and community and hope. His phone buzzed with a text from the little girl at the music therapy center. She had sent a video of herself playing piano, her leg braces visible beside the bench. The message said, "I played at my school talent show today. Thank you for teaching me that I can do anything." Marcus showed the video to everyone at the table. They all watched with tears in their eyes. This was what it was all about. Not the fame or the success or the fancy concerts, but inspiring one little girl to believe in herself. To Marcus, Elena raised her glass, for having the courage to be imperfect in a world that demands perfection.